folks. Thanks for coming back. Back are my cohorts and the people who kept us afloat here while I was gone. Dieter Staudinger, Diane Hansen, and Eric Larson there. I will try to smile as opposed to grimace. Yeah, I'll be able to notice the difference, I suppose.
Yeah, you were on vacation, right? Did we get?
Yeah, beautiful vacation.
Some vacation.
All expenses paid by the health system. So as always, we want to welcome you. This is Fearless Flight Live, our weekly edition, and it's for anyone who's afraid to fly, who may know somebody who's afraid to fly, or who just likes to talk about aviation and be informed about current aviation matters out there. We do this every week at 6:30 p.m. Pacific, 9:30 on the Eastern time zone. So welcome once again. We're glad to have you. We like to highlight our Facebook group called Fearless Flight Birds of a Feather. We encourage you to go join that by clicking on that link down below. And once you get over there, you can request to join. And once we approve you and you have gain access to the group, Facebook group, we encourage you to tell a little bit about yourself, your story, and use it and all the resources there. It's a wonderful collection of people with like-mindedness and to help each other get over this thing called fear of flying. Tonight, we have a poll question. We were discussing earlier some of the things that we could talk about. And one of the things that I know that it's common anxiety inducer amongst people is when you're standing there at the gate and you become aware that the airplane that you are about to fly has a maintenance issue, or maybe you're boarding the airplane and you see one of the inspection panels open out there. It was always funny to me as the captain to listen to the comments as I would go out there, and I personally would say something when in my greeting to my load of passengers if we boarded an airplane that had an obvious maintenance procedure going on there. So if you would just share with us, put in a comment in there whether you're if this is happened to you, or if you can imagine it, if you become aware that your airplane has a maintenance issue and they may board you normally, where are you at? Give yourself a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1 being low in anxiety, 5 being high. And for some people, they say that's enough for me. But so we're trying to get you past that.
All right, let me jump in here because we got your fans are all Jim and Sue Hopkins. Everybody is welcoming you back. So
I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
So I just want to make sure that you know that. And yeah, what do we do next?
Without boring you, I'll give you just a little rundown of what happened to me and share relevant experiences to fear, if you can believe that. And that's under the E+R=O. For those of you who have been with us for a while, you know that's our formula that we use to help people identify triggers and identify beliefs and stories that they tell themselves, because those are the two most important things. They're absolutely essential. If you're going to get over your fear of flying, you have to be able to identify what the trigger is and what the story is that goes on. And for many people, they know neither. So number 4, Eric's has been following this Sriwijaya. Yeah, that one. Crashing into he's been following that, so he's going to bring us up to date on what we know about that, and then we'll close it up with a quick anecdote, and we'll be done for the evening. So let me just start out in general. I don't want to bore you with all the details. Needless to say, I guess I'll start by saying I have had something. I'm a very healthy individual, have been all my life. And the one thing that I acquired about 20 years ago was a condition called Crohn's disease. And it's been very manageable for me. I've been very fortunate. It's an autoimmune disease, as many of the diseases that are affecting humanity now are. And I had been undergoing treatment for that. Well, the middle of last year, I had an attack, which normally lasts no more than about 18 to 24 hours. And I hadn't had one for a long time. And then I had another one about a month later, and then another one in October. And so that started me on what was thought to be a routine treatment regimen of some new steroids that I was going to take, and it all coincidentally went downhill. I don't know whether it was the perfect storm. I don't know whether it was we reached a tipping point. It doesn't really matter, but things went to hell in a handbasket very rapidly. I had been receiving treatment for this. I had had a colonoscopy, endoscopy. That's where they look at both ends of your body. They found nothing of concern, and I became very, very ill on a weekend. Communicated with my gastroenterologist, and I said, I don't know what we're doing, but I can't do this anymore. And he directed me to do a CAT scan. And in the CAT scan, I went in at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday. By the time I got home at 6:30, I had a message from one of the doctors in the group. He said, can't tell you what to do, Ron, but if I were you, I'd go to the ER and admit myself, because they'll have access to the CAT scan. And he says, basically, you have a gallbladder that's vying for the biggest one in the world right now, very inflamed. And so I went in there, and they put me right on an IV. I spent about 36 hours undergoing testing. And ironically, by the time I got to surgery on Friday, when they were giving me all the possibilities, and they said, you can, I kept opting for it because I felt really good. The IV with the antibiotics kicked in, and I was feeling nothing basically. And so the guy I was talking to, the one of the doctors there, I said, what are my options? He says, well, we could send you home and give you some antibiotics to treat it, and you'll probably be back in a week. And I'll talk in the E+R because all the beliefs I had about the gallbladder, because they played a big role in the path that my mind went down after that. So anyway, I ended up basically in emergency surgery on I think it was December 18th or so. And because of complications, because my gallbladder, that first thing that the surgeon said when he briefed me on it, he said, got two possibilities. One is we do the 4 holes and we do it laparoscopically with the little robotic thing. And he said, you may even get released the same evening. And he said, however, if for some reason that doesn't work, then we take 2 of the holes, we connect them, and we now put a hole in your right lower abdomen big enough for my little dog to crawl into. And that unfortunately is what happened. And because it had deteriorated and created some complications. And then I had to go in for another 2-hour operation the day following that to put in a stint. I didn't even know they had stints I didn't even know what a bile duct did before that. But anyway, so I have some missing parts now, and I have some additional parts which I've got to go back in a couple of months and have removed. But it was one of the scariest things, and that's kind of what I'd like to talk about is how over my life, I have a really good friend from high school that I reconnected with about 4 or 5 years ago. And she had told me about her gallbladder. And from time to time, you'll hear people talk about a gallbladder operation. And for the people who can have it removed laparoscopically, it is relatively minor surgery. But anybody who has major surgery, which is what that is, where they cut you open, I had no empathy. Not that I didn't think that it was a big deal or anything, but oh my gosh, I had no idea that you could go through so much pain. And so I was thinking amongst a lot of things. I wasn't thinking much about you the night after the initial surgery, let me tell you. But I went through some dark thoughts, and it was incredible. And go to E+R=O, because this is really the model that I can best explain what happens to us when we go through those things. And I can relate it to this fear that I had and others. The first thing, the reality was that I had a condition about which I knew very little, almost nothing. And of course that raises the specter of all your imagination on what could go wrong. And that's certainly not too much different for those of you who have a fear of flying. When you have an experience that you haven't normalized, And for me, there's no way I could normalize a gallbladder operation, and certainly not one with the complications that I had, nor can you normalize even what turbulence is or what takeoff is. And that's why ultimately you have to go through the experience. So if you have a fear of flying, there's no ultimate way to get, or ultimately you have to get on the airplane and do it. And we have a longtime student, Tom, who we quote periodically. He says, sooner or later, you got to get on the damn airplane. And I can relate to that. And while my dark moments with my thoughts had nothing to do with fear of flying, it did take me to places that I have a lot more empathy for some of you out there now than I would have had just a couple of weeks ago. Gosh, I think this is my third week after the surgery. Eric.
Well, this is really good to listen to you, because I've been checking in with you a lot, but I hadn't listened to the head part, and that's really fascinating. And you know, the bad part of me joking about stuff, but I think part of the way this relates to flying is that on the airplane, you want to keep all the designed parts on the airplane, even if you don't think you need them. But if you're a person and you have extra parts, it might be a good idea to get rid of them before they bite you. That's what I'm getting out of the story.
Yeah, and there's a thing called confirmation bias, which is it affects us. And confirmation bias is the way the human mind works. Is we form an opinion. It's not based on facts. You can justify it if you look at a person's experience and all that, but and you see it certainly in the political aspect of the United States right now. You have people that are dyed in the wool, believe one thing or the other, and it makes it so volatile because there's no way you're going to change their mind. It has to be done from within, and change is a whole nother topic. But once you have that belief system, you form a belief, you form biases around that, and you look for data to support that. When I had so little information about a gallbladder, matter of fact, I looked at, in retrospect, one of my beliefs, it turns out that I was unaware of, a gallbladder. I mean, you know, Christ, it doesn't get any press to speak of. It's a little bitty thing. I Googled it, you know, and all that. I said, well, yeah, that can't be a big deal. It can be under the right circumstances. And so, you know, if you don't know, if you don't have if you haven't normalized an experience, or you have no relevant data base about that experience, which is common for people who have fear of flying, our minds make it up. And E plus R equals O is a formula that we stole from some other people out there. And the E plus R equals O. The E is an event or an experience. And it's just something that happens to you. And we're assuming that it's something outside of your control, like whether it's my gallbladder or whether it's you experiencing turbulence. The R is your response to that. And that response is composed of either your reaction to that or the story that you tell yourself. And it really most often is best defined by a belief. Okay, so I had some beliefs about faulty as they were, about what it meant to be hospitalized and to be about to undergo this surgery. And they didn't have much concrete information. So I was forming opinions and fears, which led to the outcome, which was miserable. Like I said, at some really dark moments, and the pain that I endured after the surgery was incredible. I don't think I've ever endured anything like that. I was getting morphine as much as they would give me, and in about 20, 30 minutes, it kind of ate the morphine like Pac-Man, and the pain came back. And so, but, you know, and even the pain, I would like to, there's a parallel between that, because when I've often felt that many fearful flyers have trouble identifying what their triggers are and identifying a story or a belief in their mind. And so sometimes I simplify that by saying, you know, if you're flying in an airplane and you're on takeoff, or you hit a sudden drop, or you encounter really, really rough turbulence, what happens to many fearful flyers who can't identify a specific story or event or trigger in that is that it triggers the emotions inside of them, and the fear, you know, that all the inner turmoil that you go through that start pumping from the amygdala, that part of your brain that's designed to teach you or to alert you, to get your attention, to let you know that something is not right. And once that starts, you simply justify it where you're at by saying, if I feel that badly, certainly I must be in some sort of jeopardy. And that's the state that I got to after this surgery. I was in so much pain, and I actually tried to meditate, and I was successful for about 3 seconds. That's about it. And my mind just said, screw that. We're going to go off over here and we're going to worry some more. So I'm a believer. I've always had a lot of empathy for people who had fear of flying, but I'm a believer just from a completely different experience on that. And I like to say that, it's not that we're not trying to tell you that there are no risks in flying. And Eric's going to talk about another current accident in aviation. And as long as there are airplanes flying, there will be accidents. But what we do want to impress upon you is how safe it is, because we've learned to manage the risk. If you driving your automobile were as successful and put as much energy into managing your risk, we wouldn't kill 40,000 people on the highways every year. So that's the thing that I really want to bring this all together with is, it's not that there's no risk in aviation. It's that the lengths that we go to manage those risks. And there's a whole career field out there in safety called risk management. And every mode of transportation has a subdivision that looks at managing the risk associated with that. But the ironic thing that I like to point out is, there are more people killed as pedestrians every year than, to the point of about 7,000 every year. Then it doesn't even come close to the number of people that will die in an airplane accident every year. So I hope that has had some kind of significance to you. I just wanted to tell you, by way of explaining, that's where I've been. The path looks pretty good. I got another little operation in a couple of months to pull this little stint in there that they put in there to make sure that I wasn't getting any leaks into places in my body that I shouldn't have. And thanks for all the support and the words of the well wishes and all that. So, but the thing we really want to stay focused on is identifying what it is about flying that you are. If you do one-on-one coaching, if you do go to any of our website activities, they're all going to focus on helping you identify which is triggers. What is it about a particular phase of flight? And for people, as I said, this is too general for most people. They don't have the detail, and that's why we try to help by giving you more nuts and bolts to help you identify all the things. Because people say, I'm afraid of takeoff. Takeoff, it encompasses a whole bunch of operations. So you need to know more detail in that. And the more detail you can provide us, the more we can help you come up with what is it you believe about that? What beliefs do you have around that? What biases have you formed? What stories are you telling yourselves? And we can help you then rewrite that. And once you change your brain, you change your experience and you change your life. So thanks for that. Again, thanks for the support. And hopefully I'm gonna be around here a little bit more regularly. So let's move on to that accident. It was a 737-500, right, Eric? That was a smaller model. I don't think Boeing built all that many of them. But anyway, so just bring us up to date on what happened. It was a
little shorter, but had decent size engines in it and incredible range. Very efficient, very long range airplane. So I listened on YouTube to an Indonesian voice pronounce the name of the airline over and over. So if I beat it up, well, I'm a slow learner, but I believe it to be Sriwijaya. The V is W is replaced with a V. But at any rate, they were taking off from Jakarta, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the destination, but it was about 460 nautical miles away, so an hour flight, real short. And the airplane, I think, had 62 people on it, so loaded to 35 or 40%. So it would have been very light and real performance capable, because it would have been, it's such a lightweight with just the gas for 1 hour flight and that many people. But at any rate, they took off, and there's the flight track there, and we don't have any calls of distress or any factual stuff that ATC knows yet. But the piece of physical evidence that is so indicative as to what happened is where the flight reached 10,000, it dropped to the sea in, I believe it said 14 seconds, giving it a sustained descent rate of 40,000 feet per minute, or 450 knots, 500 miles per hour in a vertical component. And the 737 has a fabulous wing with a tremendous amount of lift, and it's just not possible to make it descend much faster than 6,000 feet per minute in any kind of sustained descent. It's just physically not possible. So highly likely what happened is the crew aerodynamically stalled the aircraft, and it rolled into a vertical dive.
So, and just to kind of make sure that we keep it straight here, this is an airplane that's been in service for 25 years. It's an older version of this Boeing 737, the most successful airplane that Boeing's ever produced there. And make sure you don't get it confused with the Maxes that are coming back into the news. It said nothing in the way of avionics or operational capabilities that the Max has. So like Eric said, it's more likely human factors of some sort, and where the airplane may have been flyable. There was weather in the area, right, Eric?
Heavy monsoon activity, which
Yeah.
you can deal with, and there've been a couple of cancellations, but it is something that requires you to deal with it. I mean, the water and rainfall rate is incredible out of the
Right.
months.
And I
And
think
I was going to mention what you brought up. The most important takeaway for our people is the airplane did not have the MCAS system installed on it. It was born way before any of that. And so that has no relation to this at all. It was a horrible tragedy, but both flight recorder boxes and the cockpit voice recorder have been recovered. They were in shallow water, 75 feet of water, easy sport diving depth, and the Navy has them. And at some point there'll be an NTSB report, and the flight recorder path will show exactly what the airplane did and how it did at the track.
And I
So
think you said that,
we'll know.
yeah, I think you said that there were some articles or testimony from pilots for that airline that were complaining about currency.
There was public complaining.
They've been impacted by COVID as well.
From the pilots that, due to the rollback of their actual flying, was very little, and the only currency they received was when they were actually operating the airplane. Some of them mentioned that they'd only flown 1 or 2 since February, which would make it exceedingly difficult to do anything with any kind of skill. And that's as opposed and most of Europe and everywhere else, we have strict currency requirements. And my friends that aren't flying now, we need to have what we call 3 takeoffs and landings every 90 days. That's the base requirement. The company has a whole simulator profile you fly with, takeoff emergencies, landing emergencies, all kind of stuff. So your 3 takeoffs and landings, having a whole lot of stuff that isn't real fun, and that has to be completed every 90 days to be legal. And what my buddies are telling us, a mutual friend of Ron and I, is the company's people back every 60 days just to make sure they don't bump up against non-currency. So as I like to say, my hands are flat, but they aren't going anywhere. They're going to the training center and flying the simulator around until they're cross-eyed. So remaining quite current and capable in the airplane, doing far more training than they would be doing on a normal basis.
Eric, real quick.
Eric and I were just talking about a good friend who's doing that very thing. Has to fly down to the training center down in Dallas to stay current more then he's actually flying trips right now. And that's changing because they're starting to gear up more international. Dieter?
Yeah, Sue just asked, what's MCAS? Eric?
MCAS?
I'm sorry, Sue. That's the system, the maneuvering heuristic augmentation system that was installed on the 737 MAX that caused all the problems with the crashes and trimmings. It's been redesigned by Boeing and inspected by the FAA and reapproved for operation after an exceedingly lengthy and financially painful process for Boeing, that's for sure, and the airlines.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not in any way to criticize that particular airline because I don't know much about them. But I am going to say, for most of you out there, you're never going to be even faced with the opportunity to fly on an airline like that. You're going to be Western Hemisphere, Western Europe. You're going to be in the first tier. We've gone through that before. Maybe we can put a link in there about the 3 different tiers of airlines according to Arnold Barnett. But if you Google Arnold Barnett and airline safety, you'll come up with his latest on what that is. And if you're in tier 1, which is 99% of you, that's all you're ever going to fly, your odds of dying in an airplane crash are 1 in 33.2 million. So, and in order to achieve that, in reality, you'd have to fly once a day, every day for 91,000 years. And I now know for sure I'm not going to make that 91,000. I have it on good report that because
You're getting a late start.
Yeah.
You're getting a very late start.
Because
Me
me and my mortality had an intimate conversation or 4. So anyway.
So, yeah, as we're kind of like winding down, I just wanted to make sure there was a little bit of a side conversation going on in chat. And that's just because, what is current is not necessarily airplanes crashing. What's current is lockdowns and limitations and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And how to deal with that and how to deal with the anxiety that comes from, observing, for example, oneself adhering to certain guidelines that are sensible and make sense and others not. And, everybody else kind of like being connected. I mean, to me, the pandemic has, I think, shown more than anything just how much all of us are connected. And that's both a really cool thing, and if it's not going so well, it's also not such.
Very painful.
Yeah. So go ahead, Diane.
No, I was just going to say, as you said, it's very painful. I just got an email today. A good friend, his mom died. She was about 102, and she lived a wonderful long life back in New York, upstate New York, where we're all from. But her services we all can't gather because of the COVID issue. So while the flying is coming back, it's still not back enough so that people can feel more connected the way as we all talk about is so important.
Yeah.
And our main purpose here at Fearless Flight is to E+R=O. We are here to help you identify the triggers and help you change your story. So don't be surprised after we end the show here tonight. You'll be minding your own business, and all of a sudden a thought will pop up. Did they say that that we could die if we do that? No, there's no reason for you not to communicate with us, right? And I did want to say something about COVID. My mom, ironically, 95 years old, had recurring cancer in her right breast and had to have a mastectomy because the other options were just not available. So she and I have spent a total of 2 weeks in the hospital, over 4 different visits, and we've all continued to stay COVID negative. So, I wasn't looking for my own kind of a journal on COVID and personalized experience, but I will throw that out there. And they tested me before the surgery. It's incredible. So, I do want to, for anybody out there who works in the healthcare business, it was chaotic in many ways, but I want to tell you, it was amazing. The people out there, I had a different nurse every 12 hours over the 6 days that I was in there. Over half of them were traveling. They had come in from some other Minneapolis, Baltimore, California, just doing an incredible job. And they were as responsive as they could be. But I knew if I asked for even just a simple question that they had to go to the record section or something like that, it would be an hour or more before they get back to me. That's how busy they were. It was quite an experience. And ironically, I came out and because of the deterioration of my gallbladder, it had actually had gangrene in it. So they when they made this big hole in my chest, when they sealed it, they didn't put it back together and heal it. So of course they told me, said, by the way, you're going to have a flap for at least a couple of weeks, because they didn't want to take a chance of sealing it and getting a skin infection. So I had to go back in a week ago yesterday and where they stitched it. And I'm starting to get some kind of healing. Up until that point, it was really miserable. And then the next day I had the worst pain. So I spent another 8 hours in the ER, again, exposing myself to all the risk and all that. But so I just want to say my hats are off to the healthcare workers, certainly that I experienced out there. So, okay, E plus R equals O. That helps, that we use that to try to troubleshoot our own process. We use that in the airlines for safety and planning and accident investigation to prevent incidents like that accident that Eric went over. But sometimes you just don't know. And I mentioned, or if I didn't mention, I'll mention it now. Because of my Crohn's, I actually, myself and my primary gastroenterologist that I've been working with for 20 years, we both surmised that we actually caused confirmation bias, and we didn't even consider my gallbladder from the middle. And looking back now, it was probably my gallbladder that was acting up last summer and giving us a lot of alerts and a lot of warnings. So, but sometimes we simply don't know why things happen to us. So Eric's going to close with a story that we did touch on it a couple of weeks ago, but we'll
Hey, you guys, what if I just cut this into 1 minute and save the whole story for later, since I kind of went over it, but because we're at 8. But Dieter, throw up the Alaska airplane slide.
I got it ready right here. There you go.
So if you guys remember, I told that we were talking about wildlife when Alaska airplane hit a bear on the runway in Yakutat. And I told the fish story in terms of some things happen that are just unplanned and you can't fence everything out. It was when an airplane struck a fish airborne. And I think my conclusion was there, yes, sometimes things just happen, and B, the fish was a total loser to have been yanked out of the water and then slammed by an airplane all before noon. And it's probably on the top of the list of Darwin Award winners for fish. But nevertheless, the conclusion we're going to show you is Alaska has had a great relationship with their state and their product, which a huge amount of their GMP is seafood. Yeah. And you see on the airplane, that's the sponsoring. It is Wild Alaska Food. So it's a sponsor, but this is really one of the most fabulous liveries, which is how we refer to paint jobs anywhere in the industry. That's 129-foot long king salmon painted onto the side of the airplane. And as far as anybody knows, no eagles have attempted to attack the airplane yet. It's unshipped. And you can demonstrate your seasoned traveler acumen if you ever see this airplane, because the crews, it's a 737-800NG, and the crews lovingly refer to it as the Salmon 30 Salmon. And now you can too. Salmon 30 Salmon.
Our brain evolved to notice patterns in our environment. We had a primitive part of our brain that were instinctive, like most other lower animals, but we evolved to this higher form to be aware of our own experience, and we look for patterns. And what we do with those patterns is we take them in and we hold on to the ones that we think will be beneficial to protect us and keep us safe in the future. And so, as we've discussed tonight, there is no way that you can, that we can correctly analyze everything that happens to us. So we all need help with each other. There's no way that I could trust the stories that were going on in my mind as I lay there hospitalized through this whole process there. And there's no way that you can answer all these questions yourself. If you don't get other help, your brain will make it up. It will make up its own story. So please, E plus R equals O. If you come up with, if you get stumped and you're either afraid to fly or you're anxious when you fly, white knuckled, stay in touch with us. Keep coming back every week. So I'd like to thank everybody there. Again, thanks for all the well-wishing that on my behalf. And we'll be back next week for another episode of Fearless Flight Live. Have a great week, you guys.
Good night, you guys.